Let's go. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for coming to the first ever Lection from OLLI, the Osher Lifelong Learning Institute at the University of South Dakota. I'm so glad you're here, joining us from your homes and here to listen to people reading today. This is one of my favorite things to do, and I'm really excited to share this with you. This is my friend Jenny McNamara, and you may know her from a lot of different places, but including the editorials in the newspaper. You'll see her interviewed on TV a lot. She's a pretty community active person. I really love following what Jenny's up to right now. So Jenny, I would love to have you go ahead and tell us all about Lection, and let's get started.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Jenny. It's nice to have you all here. Welcome to my home. Thank you for inviting me into yours. What is Lection? As Thea said, I'm involved in a lot of stuff. I'm involved in a lot of interactive theater and some comedy and other things like that, performance things. I do some public speaking, and I occasionally I'm an MC of events and things like that. But those are all things I developed over time. I was probably born a storyteller. I think I probably came out of the womb talking. And with that, I also became an avid reader and an occasional writer. And when you're someone that talks all the time, it's sometimes nice. It's sometimes intimidating when you're someone like me that talks all the time. Other people don't often talk to you. They just think that they're there to hear you speak. One of the things I've always loved, in addition to being an avid reader, is to have someone read to me. I often say, I just wish there was someone here to read me a bedtime story. I was doing a little research project for a speaking event I was coming up to do, and this was, Thea and I just figured out, it was 3 years ago, and doing some reading about the average attention span and engaging your audience, and how long it takes before you have the grip of somebody. And it's 2 minutes and 37 seconds. There's actually been some studies done that if you are presenting something to someone after 2 minutes and 37 seconds, if they're gonna really be taken in by it, that's about when it happens. So I've never been one to join a book club and sit with a bunch of other people reading the same book and then talking it apart, because I just haven't. I kind of also get stuck in one genre. I tend to only read one kind of book. And I wanted to broaden my horizons and have people read me bedtime stories. So I came up with Lection, and the definition of the word Lection is a specific piece of reading material. It's a book, it can be a lection. So I invited some people together and said, you're gonna take your book. You're not gonna tell anybody else what the book is, what the title is, nothing about the book at all, not the genre, nothing. The book is a secret. And when it's your turn, you're gonna open the book, and it's up to you. You can start at the beginning, you can start wherever the book opens, you can start in the middle of a sentence. And you're going to read for 2 minutes and 37 seconds, and then you have to stop mid-sentence. Even if it's mid-sentence, when the time runs out, you're done. And then we're all going to go around. We're all going to read. When you finish reading, you're still not going to tell us what your book is. You're not going to tell us the author. You're not going to tell us anything about it. When everybody who's read is done, then we'll go back and say, okay, tell us what your book was. Tell us what it was about. And every time I've done this, I've found that it really opens people up to new genres and new authors. I do recommend, if you haven't already, like if you've got a piece of paper and a pen, because somebody might read something and you want to make a note of their name so that afterwards you can be like, Kathy, whatever you read, I want to know what happens next. Where did you get that book? What is it about? Why did you pick it up? So I always at Lection, I encourage people to have a pen and paper, and I encourage everybody, especially if you're not used to public speaking or reading to any other people, make sure you have a drink of water next to you. And don't worry about what you sound like. Don't worry about coming up with the voices for characters. Don't worry about inflection. If that comes natural to you, then do that. Whatever feels good. Don't worry about if you're pronouncing a word wrong. Either just fumble through it or skip it. Just don't worry about it. I just want you to read to me for 2 minutes and 37 seconds. And then at the end, every single time we've done this, I have ended up reading a new book that I would have never picked up on my own, or learned about a new author, or generally when I've done this before, at least one person in the crowd is someone that I know very well personally. Hi, Sean Burke. You would be one of my one persons in the crowd. And I'm still surprised. They'll read something that surprises me about them, that they picked. Then I say, well, where did you come up with that? So that's basically what Lection is. When Anne had asked, when we were just kind of chatting before, Jenny, how did you come to be here for this? And I just made it up one day. So I do have a history in, like I said, in theater, English. My English was my educational background, things like that. So reading and being in love with stories, I didn't just come up with that 3 years ago. Like I said, I was born Irish, so we're born that way. So I know that Thea had reached out and said if anybody had knew for sure they wanted to volunteer to read, she's got a list of readers, and I know that I'm one of them. So I don't know, Thea, would you like me to go first?
Yeah, let me give a little bit of logistics on how this is going to happen. I'm keeping track with the timer for 2 minutes and 37 seconds on my phone, and I'm going to mute everyone except the person who's speaking. When my alarm goes off, I'm going to shut you off. So that will be the end of the 2 minutes and 37 seconds. You won't be able to finish your sentence, and that's okay. I did have quite a few of you get back to me, so the order, if Jenny wants to start, the order will be Jenny, and then we'll go Nancy, Monica, Jane, Anne, Jim, Deb, Marianne, Cassandra, Mary Enright, Bill, and Kathy. And I have something too if we have time. So I think we will go ahead and let's practice on Jenny. Go ahead, Jenny, get us started.
And before Thea starts the timer, we do have more people on the video than people that volunteered, correct? Some of you are just listeners?
That's totally okay, yeah.
Yes, it is absolutely okay to just be a listener. It's also absolutely okay to decide at the end that, hey, I want to read too. So once we kind of get through the list, if you want to read, just, I don't know if you guys use the chat in the Zooms, but if you want to send a chat to Thea that you're interested in being a reader. So, but okay, Thea, you just tell me when to start. I'm ready.
Great, go.
You should meditate on the nature of elemental air on a regular basis. This meditation will improve your ability to visualize and understand the air energy, and it will help link in your unconscious mind the hand gesture of the element. Fill your mind with images and sensations associated with elemental air. Imagine the sound of a rustling pine tree on a mountainside that has been bent by the prevailing wind. Feel a breeze brush against your cheeks and move your hair. Breathe deeply and be refreshed by it. Picture white clouds rolling across the open blue sky and birds flying high above you. When you have filled your mind with airy imagery, use your will and draw that yellow air energy out of the atmosphere above you and into your left hand, and send it down your left arm and across your shoulders and across your back, down your right arm, and then into your heart center. This causes your heart center to gradually change from a soft white to a bright yellow. And then when you have filled your heart center, use that energy to flow out and then up to the crown of your head and circulate. The air energy fills you and it makes you light and open. Feel it expanding your consciousness. It refreshes and cleanses your organs, tissues, and bones, blowing away the psychic dust that is settled there. Touch together the tips of your thumbs, your index fingers and small fingers. Concentrate the air energy back into your heart center until it spins with great speed and glows a bright yellow. Contemplate your heart center for a minute in this posture. To restore the elemental balance inside your body, shift into the spiral. Visualize the air energy flowing from your heart center into your receptive left hand, and use the power of your will to carry it up your left arm, across your back at the shoulders, and down your right arm. Send the energy out of your right hand in a twisting yellow stream into the ground where it is earthed. Change to a closing posture and contemplate your inner energy balance for a minute with your eyes shut. You should feel refreshed and your thoughts clearer and more sharply focused. Take a few silent breaths to end your meditation. The meditation of spirit. This meditation.
Okay, Jenny. That was wonderful. All right, I gotta unmute you since you're the actual person. I think you might have to hit a button on your computer. There you go. Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Thanks. So I need to reset my timer here, and our next person is Nancy. Nancy, are you ready? We just need you to, maybe I can unmute you. Nope, I can't. I need you to do it, sorry.
How's that? The time goes very fast.
It does. Are you ready?
I am ready.
All right, go.
Sarah leaves the children wreathed in their dreams. She wanders out in the tent into bracing cold with a bottle of whiskey pinched from the surgeon's tent. In the morning, they will be on a wagon bound for Fort Ridgely. She has no trunk to pack, no clothes or necessaries to make ready, or goodbyes to make, no last minute instructions for a servant. She has only herself and her babies. Unsisi is beyond her help. Chaske is locked up in a horrid jail. She can't free him from wanting to die. Stars come down close, walk on close. One night he lay beside her, teaching her the sky. The constellation she knew as Orion the hunter, he called the Hand. A chief grew tired of making sacrifices on behalf of his people. He hunted only for himself. Because he was no longer generous, they suffered. At last, the thunderings punched him. They took his hand and hid it in the sky. The North Star there, Wikanjio Wanzila, he called it, the star that stands in one place. That star was so sad from losing his wife, he froze and never again strayed from that spot. Perhaps Kaski froze in place when he lost his wife. Whoever that Winyan had been, he loved her. Not once has she heard him speak that woman's name. The liquor burns down her throat into her belly. She wants to believe that he has loved her too, but how can she know? She doesn't even know her own heart. Can love be distinguished from the intimacy of refuge, lonely desire, inexpressible gratitude, affection born of sympathy and longing? All these and more she has felt for him, but love? The two of them exist in contrast. What unites them in the end? He who is liked by the stars, she blots out the moon with her thumb. Perhaps he did shoot at Gleason in the wagon. You know so little about him. Perhaps you don't know him at all. Perhaps no one can truly know.
Okay, Nancy, we're at the stop on that one. That was wonderful. I have questions. All right. The next person on our list is Monica. Monica, let's see if I can unmute you.
I can unmute myself.
There we go. Tell me when you're ready.
I'm ready.
All right, go.
At first, Merle was quiet and affectionate and calm. However, 24 hours later, the barnyard turned into a high school classroom. Merle strutted around his section of the pasture, peeing on his beard and into his mouth, curling his lips and making loud gurgling sounds. He was a baboon, a goofy goat baboon. And though he could not possibly have looked more ridiculous, the girls thought he was hotter than hot, a sexy, sweating, stinking football team captain. The girls paraded past him, tails and heads held high, runway models. They started at one end of the fence, paused next to Merle, then continued another few feet before turning and walking slowly back. Merle loved them all. He ogled and goggled and drooled and peed. He was Hugh Hefner, the king of his very own dough kingdom. At first, he seemed to like Amma best. Then he went ballistic when Holly sashayed past. Finally, Loretta did her runway walk, and he could barely contain himself. He tried to climb over the fence, squeeze under it, go straight through the metal. Isn't that just like a man, I said to David, to prefer the younger woman? Whenever I disparaged Merle, David defended him. He doesn't smell that bad. Actually, I think he smells pretty good. You just need to stand back when he pees, and so on. He can't help it, David said. It's just basic biology. I sure wish I had known this earlier, I said. David rolled his eyes. Here we go again. But it did seem to me that until this very moment, I had lacked an understanding of some fundamental truths that farm kids must have grown up knowing. How a buck or a bull or boar will instinctively and aggressively pursue any ready and willing female. Knowing that might have made the rejections and betrayals I experienced in my young dating years a whole lot easier to take. Goat cheese, 1/2 gallon room temperature goat's milk, 1 drop double strength liquid rennet, 1/4 cup non-chlorinated water, 1/8 teaspoon mesophilic starter. Strain milk into a large mason jar or other non-metal container. Dissolve rennet in water and add to the.
All right, time's up. Oh my gosh, this is fun.
I definitely have questions. I'm making some notes here. I've got questions.
Definitely. All right, our next one is Jane Taylor. Jane, can you unmute yourself?
Yes,
There we are. Let me know when you're ready and I'll hit the button.
I'm ready.
Okay, go.
I desire this holy instant for myself, that I may share it with my brother whom I love. It is not possible that I can have it without him or he without me. Yet it is wholly possible for us to share it now. And so I choose this instant as the one to offer to the Holy Spirit, that his blessing may descend on us and keep us both in peace. There is nothing outside you. That is what you must ultimately learn, for it is the realization that the kingdom of heaven is restored to you. For God created only this, and he did not depart from it, nor leave it separate from himself. The kingdom of heaven is the dwelling place of the Son of God, who left not his Father and dwells not apart from him. Heaven is not a place or a condition. It is merely an awareness of perfect oneness and the knowledge that there is nothing else, nothing outside this oneness, and nothing else within. What could God give but knowledge of himself? What else is there to give? The belief that you could give and get something else, something outside yourself, has cost you the awareness of heaven and of your identity. and you have done a stranger thing than you yet realize. You have displaced your guilt to your body from your mind. Yet a body cannot be guilty, for it can do nothing of itself. You who think you hate your body deceive yourself. You hate your mind, for guilt has entered into it, and it would remain separate from your brothers, which it cannot do. Minds are joined, bodies are not. Only by assigning to the mind the properties of the body, does separation seem to be possible. And it is the mind that seems to be fragmented and private and alone.
That's the end. All right. Jane, that was really good. It's hard to talk and shut off my timer here. Mary has a question. Before we reveal our book, do we get to guess if we think we know who the author is or who the book might be? What do you think, Jenny?
We can do a little bit of that. I always encourage there to be discussion, especially since a lot of people do choose fiction, but there are people like myself, I chose not a fictional, not a nonfiction book. So yeah, I do think if we feel like we recognize the book, I think that's the way that people, when they come to Lection, if they don't know each other, they find someone else that does have something in common with them, that kindred spirit effect. So absolutely, maybe we can do that through the chat as we go back and we call up which author is going to reveal their book. If you have a guess, go ahead and put it in the chat. But if the readers would not answer that until we're all done and ready to know the answer, that would be great.
All right. So our next reader is Anne. Anne, let me know when you're ready.
I'm unmuted. My mother's playing cards with my aunt. Spite and malice, the family pastime, the game my grandmother taught all her daughters. Midsummer, too hot to go out. Today my aunt's ahead, she's getting the good cards. My mother's dragging, having trouble with her concentration. She can't get used to her own bed this summer. She had no trouble last summer getting used to the floor. She learned to sleep there to be near my father. He was dying. He got a special bed. My aunt doesn't give an inch, doesn't make allowance for my mother's weariness. It's how they were raised. You show respect by fighting. To let up insults the opponent. Each player has one pile to the left, 5 cards in the hand. It's good to stay inside on days like this, to stay where it's cool. And this is better than other games, better than solitaire. My grandmother thought ahead. She prepared her daughters. They have cards, they have each other. They don't need any more companionship. All day long the game goes on, but the sun doesn't move. It just keeps beating down, turning the grass yellow. That's how it must seem to my mother. And then suddenly, something is over. My aunt's been at it longer. Maybe that's why she's playing better. Her cards evaporate. That's what you want. That's the object in the end. The one who has nothing wins.
You have some more time if you want to keep reading.
That's all I copied off.
Okay, awesome. All right. There we go. Okay, our next reader is Jim Oldham. Do you want to unmute yourself, Jim? All right, Jim, tell me when you're ready.
On a Monday like any other during my junior year of high school, I entered my leadership class, excited to share an idea. Leadership class was for student government officers and representatives. About 25 of us were enrolled, the vast majority of whom were white. We discussed student activities and worked on school projects together, but we were friends too. A group of us hung out together outside of school, and when we did, a few other non-whites tagged along. We were a pretty diverse group of kids, and because of this, I didn't expect that anyone would object to my idea. Celebrate Black History Month? They'll all probably wonder why they didn't think of it first. The bell rang and the teacher asked whether we had any new business to discuss. I raised my hand, took the floor, and proposed that we initiate a school celebration of Black History Month. I explained how curious I was about the Black national anthem and how learning about its origins had made me eager to find out even more about my history. None of our history class even talked about Black history, I said, and I thought it would be good to celebrate Black History Month so we could all learn more about people who looked like me. I didn't stop there though. I shotgunned ideas. We should invite speakers, I said. We could share quotes from Black leaders during announcements and maybe even create a Black spiritual choir. I finished and waited for my friends to chime in with ideas of their own. Surely they'd unanimously vote to adopt the month-long celebration. After all, Black History Month had made its way into the mainstream of consciousness. McDonald's had even run an advertising campaign celebrating it. Certainly our school would celebrate it too, right? Oh, how naive a high school junior can be. Instead of unanimous approval, a heavy silence greeted me. I looked around and found that not everyone felt the same way I did. Then a voice broke the silence. Are we going to celebrate Italian American History Month too? A few snickers. What about White History Month? Someone else added. I shot both of them sideways glances. It seemed to me that we celebrated white history every day of the school year, but I didn't say anything. Another girl, someone I considered a close friend, voiced her opposition. Another student objected, then another.
That's it, Jim. Oh, I have lots of questions. All right. That was really great. Deb Toffin, are you ready?
I am ready.
All right. Go ahead and go.
My friends, I had not intended to discuss this controversial subject at this particular time. However, I want you to know that I do not shun controversy. On the contrary, I will take a stand on any issue at any time, regardless of how fraught with controversy it might be. You have asked me how I feel about whiskey. All right, here is how I feel about whiskey. If when you say whiskey, you mean the devil's brew, the poison scourge, the bloody monster that defiles innocence, dethrones reason, destroys the home, creates misery and poverty, yea, literally takes the bread from the mouths of little children. If you mean the evil drink that topples the Christian man and woman from the pinnacle of righteous, gracious living into the bottomless pit of degradation and despair and shame and helplessness and hopelessness, then certainly I am against it. But if when you say whiskey, you mean the oil of conversation, the philosophic wine, the ale that is consumed when good fellows get together, that puts a song in their hearts and laughter on their lips and the warm glow of contentment in their eyes. If you mean Christmas cheer, if you mean the stimulating drink that puts the spring into the old gentleman's step on a frosty, crispy morning, if you mean the drink that enables a man to magnify his joy and his happiness and to forget, if only for a little while, life's great tragedies and heartaches and sorrows, if you mean that drink, the sale of which pours into our treasuries untold millions of dollars, which are used to provide tender care for our disabled children, our blind, our deaf, our aged and infirm, to build highways and hospitals and schools, then certainly I am for it. That is my stand. I will not retreat from it. I will not compromise. It's done.
Are you finished? Oh,
There I am.
great. Okay. That was fun.
I'm for it too.
I know. It's really hard not to say anything right now. Our next reader is Marianne Marco. Marianne, are you ready?
I am ready.
Okay, hold on one second. I have to restart. Okay, go.
In 2 hours, a carriage stopped at the door. The bell was rung with a hasty jerk, and the servants admitted a lady who came directly to Mrs. Wheeler's apartment. I was greatly surprised, for though the veil, the bonnet, and the dress were those of that lady, or exactly similar, the face was black. I stood in mute amazement when a voice not in the least languid called out, What are you gazing at me in that manner for? Am I to be insulted by my own slaves? Mr. Wheeler just at that moment stepped in. She turned towards him, and the mixture of surprise and curiosity with which he regarded her was most ludicrous. "Are you gone mad?" inquired the not now languid voice, "or what is the matter?" "You may well ask that question," exclaimed Mr. Wheeler, sobbing with suppressed laughter. "Why, madam, I don't know you. Your face is black as a topet." "Black," said the lady, the expression of astonishment on his countenance transferred to hers. "Hannah, bring me the mirror." I complied. She gazed a moment, and then her mingled emotion of grief, rage, and shame were truly awful. To all Mr. Wheeler's inquiries of "How did it happen, my dear? And how come your face would turn black, my dear?" she only answered that she did not know, had no idea, and then she wept and moaned and finally went into a fit of strong hysterics. Mr. Wheeler and myself flew to her assistance. To tell the truth, he was now more concerned about his wife than the office. "Heaven help me," he said, bending over her. "I fear that her beauty is gone forever. What a dreadful thing it is. I have never heard of the like. It must have been the powder." The powder was white, I thought. The powder certainly is white, and yet it may possess a chemical property as occasions blackness. Indeed, I recently saw in a newspaper some accounts of a chemist who, having been jilted by a lady very liberal in the application of powder to her face, had invented a method of revenge, a certain kind of smelling bottles, of which the fumes would suddenly blacken the whitest skin, provided the said cosmetic had been previously applied. "You wretch," exclaimed the lady, suddenly opening her eyes. "Why didn't you tell me this before?" I didn't think of it. I didn't know it was necessary," I stammered. "Oh no, you didn't think of it."
That's time. All right. I'm super curious. Okay, next reader, Cassandra Robinson. Can you unmute yourself, please?
There we go.
All right. Cassandra, let me know when you're ready.
Okay.
Go ahead.
And there we go. I think perhaps after dinner we will have a little session with Planchette, Mrs. Montag said. "Just Arthur and I, of course. The rest of you, I can see, are not ready yet. You would only drive away the spirits. We will need a quiet room." "The library?" Luke suggested politely. "The library? I think it might do. Books are frequently very good carriers, you know. Materializations are often best produced in rooms where there are books. I cannot think of any time when materialization was in any way hampered by the presence of books. I suppose the library has been dusted?" Arthur sometimes sneezes. "Mrs. Dudley keeps the entire house in perfect order," the doctor said. "I really will speak to Mrs. Dudley in the morning. You will show us the library then, John? And then, young man, you will bring down my case. Not the large suitcase, mind, but the small attaché case. Bring it to me in the library. We will join you later. After a session with Planchette, I require a glass of milk and perhaps a small cake. Crackers will do if they are not too heavily salted. A few minutes of quiet conversation with congenial people is also very helpful, particularly if I am to be receptive during the night. The mind is a precise instrument and it cannot be tended too carefully. Arthur," she bowed distantly to Eleanor and Theodora and went out, escorted by Arthur, Luke, and her husband. After a minute, Theodora said, "I think I'm going to be simply crazy about Mrs. Montag." "I don't know," Eleanor said. "Arthur is rather more to my taste, and Luke is a coward, I think." "Poor Luke," Theodora said. "He never had a mother." Looking up, Eleanor found that Theodora was regarding her with a curious smile, and she moved away from the table so quickly that a glass spilled. "We shouldn't be alone," she said oddly, breathless. "We've got to find the others." She left the table and almost ran from the room, and Theodora ran after her, laughing, down the corridor and into the little parlor, where Luke and the doctor stood before the fire. "Please, sir," Luke was saying meekly, "who's Planchette?" The doctor sighed irritably. Imbeciles, he said, and then, sorry, the whole idea annoys me, but if she likes it, he turned and poked the fire furiously. Planchette, he went on after a moment, is a device similar to the Ouija board, or perhaps I might explain better by...
Thank you, Cassandra. The timer is going. All right. That just got more interesting as it went. Let's see, our next reader is Mary Enright. Mary, can you unmute yourself, please? All right, Mary, let me know when you're ready.
All right, ready.
Go.
We all know what happened next. At 8:23 a.m. on a Sunday morning, May 18th, the north side of the volcano collapsed, sending an enormous avalanche of dirt and rock rushing down the mountain slope at 150 miles an hour. It was the biggest landslide in human history and carried enough material to bury the whole of Manhattan to a depth of 400 feet. A minute later, its flank severely weakened. St. Helens exploded with the force of 500 Hiroshima-sized atomic bombs, shooting out a murderous hot cloud at up to 650 miles an hour, much too fast, clearly, for anyone to outrace. Many people were thought to be in the safe zone, often far out of sight of the volcanoes were overtaken. 57 people were killed. 23 of the bodies were never found. The toll would have been much higher, except that it was a Sunday. Had it been a weekday, many lumber workers would have been working within the death zone. As it was, people were killed 18 miles away. The luckiest person on that day was a graduate student named Harry Glicken. He had been manning an observation post 5.7 miles from the mountain, but he had a college placement interview on May 18th in California, and so had left the site the day before the eruption. His place was taken by David Johnston. Johnston was the first to report the volcano exploding. Moments later, he was dead. His body was never found. Glicken's luck, alas, was temporary. 11 years later, he was one of 43 scientists and journalists fatally caught up in a lethal outpouring of superheated ash, gases, and molten rock, what is known as a pyroclastic flow, at Mount Unzen in Japan, when another volcano was catastrophically misread. Volcanologists may or may not be the worst scientists in the world at making predictions, but they are without question the worst in the world at realizing just how bad their predictions are. Less than 2 years after the Unzen catastrophe, another group of volcano watchers, led by Stanley Williams at the University of Arizona, descended into the rim of an active volcano called Galeras in Colombia. Despite the deaths of recent years, only 2 of the 16 members of Williams' party wore safety helmets or other protective gear. The volcano erupted, killing 6 of the
Mary, can you hear us? I got her shut off in time, but I didn't get me unmuted in time, so thank you. That was wonderful. Bill, are you ready for us? Can you unmute yourself, please?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, go ahead and go.
Prologue. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Harry Johnson said, "If you want a story, I'll tell you a story, though I can't explain it to you or tell you the end. There isn't any end." Sounds intriguing. Oh, it's intriguing, all right. Go on. It happened to a friend of mine. This person who was the luckiest person I've ever known. You could almost say he was hounded by good luck. Lost everything overnight. Bloody hell, you mean in a market crash, something like that? No, not money. I mean he lost everything. He woke up one morning and found himself without wife, son, even his dog. He did not know what had happened, and of course no one would believe him, and he had no idea what to do. He considered going to the police, but what in hell would he say? They wouldn't believe him. I mean, wouldn't believe the wife, the son, the dog had simply disappeared. Well, you know how bloody-minded police can be. I do indeed, Jory smiled in a crazy kind of way. Right, families don't all of a sudden disappear. I mean, unless some psychopath walks in and murders them all. He told me he felt he was living in a parallel universe, that his wife and son were in one and he was in another. Then what did he do? He hired the best private detectives. They found nothing, not a trace. There simply was no trail. Harry stopped, took out another cigarette, offered the case to jury again, and jury again refused. That was a year ago. And it struck jury suddenly the answer to the question he had glumly posed to himself earlier. What kept him going? Here was the answer: curiosity. He waited for Harry Johnson to fill in the blank after "and." Harry lit his cigarette, blew out a stream of smoke, and said, "The dog came back." Jury stared. "This is a joke, right?" Unsmiling, Harry Johnson said, "No, it isn't. The dog just came back." They were both silent for a moment while Harry Johnson seemed to be collecting himself. "So do you want to hear the rest of it?" Dumbly, jury nodded. Man walked into a pub. Chapter 1. Harry Johnson lit another cigarette, flipped his lighter shut, and said, "You're not convinced, I can see. I'm not joking." Richard Jury just looked at him, seeing the man was not about to back down from his improbable tale, for surely that's what it was, a tale. Jury could only laugh, turn back to the bar and pick up his pint. "Come on, the dog came back." He drank. "Wife, son, dog disappeared. The dog came back. How long did you say?" "A year." "Nearly 9, 10 months, perhaps." Harry Johnson blew a big smoke ring and then lit one, and then a little.
That's the alarm, Bill. That was great. Again, so many questions. Wow.
I'm just gonna put this out there. Aliens.
You're not supposed to talk. You told me that.
Okay, I'm not talking.
It's really hard not to, isn't it? And then Kathy Grady. Kathy, can you unmute yourself?
Yes.
Tell me when you're ready.
Okay, I'm cheating. I'm cheating because the only books I read these days are audiobooks. So
That's okay. All right, hold on. All right, go.
As it often did since he'd married a cop, murder interrupted more pleasant activities. Then again, Rourke supposed, the woman lying in a pool of her own blood, a few steps inside the arch in Washington Square Park, had a heftier complaint. After all, he'd known what he, a former criminal, no convictions, was getting into when he fell for the cop. He doubted the woman in fashionable athletic wear had expected to end the pretty spring night with her belly sliced open. He and his cop might have missed the last scene of an entertaining play, but the woman missed the rest of her life. And here, on a balmy May night in the blooming spring of 2061, he watched another kind of play. His cop and the victim held center stage under the hard crime scene lights. Together they made a sad silhouette against the thin curtain meant to shield the dead from the prying eyes of onlookers. Uniforms had barriers up to separate the rest of the audience. The vendors, the lovers, the strollers and tourists, the buskers and dog walkers goggled at death. He kept out of the way as the lead, Lieutenant Eve Dallas, performed her duties in this tale of morality and mortality. She crouched beside the body, lean and tough in her leather jacket and boots, her field kit open beside her, her short brown hair shining under the lights. Victim is identified as Gala Modesto, age 33, residence on Prince. Gala Modesto. When Rourke spoke, Eve lifted her head, narrowed those whiskey-colored cop's eyes. "You know her?" "No. Her brother a bit. Modesto Wine and Spirits. She'd be one of the heirs. 3rd generation, I think. International family-owned company with their home base in Tuscany." Interesting. Married, Jorge Tween, 6 years. 1 offspring, a son, age 4. She took out a gauge.
All right, that's our alarm.
Kathy, that's an excellent use of the technology, of finding a way to make that work. I've originally, when we started Lection, I encouraged everyone to have an actual real book because I'm such a lover of actual physical real books. But so many people do now do the audiobooks or do Kindle and readers and things. So yes, I am so glad that you didn't feel excluded from participating because your book was audio. So
excellent. All right, that was 11 readers right there, or 12 actually with Jenny. Has anyone else decided that they would like to read? I have a piece here too, but if you've changed your mind and would like to read something, we'd love to hear from you. All right, I don't see anybody coming out, so let's see if I can do all these 3 things at once here. Okay, I'm gonna do mine here. Go. Had James Dean been a part of Star Wars generation, he would have known to listen to Obi-Wan Kenobi, but James Dean died 22 years before Star Wars came out. So when he met the future Jedi Knight and Knight of the British Empire, Alec Guinness, one fall evening in Hollywood in 1955, it was decades before the actor would play the wise, bearded Force guru. Still, when James met Guinness, the elder actor was apparently already tapped into some mystical force. 1 week before Dean's death at the wheel of a very fast, cursed object, the future Oscar-winning actor of Bridge on the River Kwai told the future Oscar-winning actor of Rebel Without a Cause that if he got that car, he'd be dead in a week. Guinness was correct to the day. A very, very odd, spooky experience. Guinness would call the moment more than 2 decades later during a 1977 interview with Michael Parkinson on the BBC talk show Parkinson. James Dean was born in 1931 in Indiana. In 1951, he dropped out of UCLA to pursue acting. After a few commercials, walk-on movie roles, and television appearances, Dean filmed the 3 films he was known for: East of Eden, 1955, Rebel Without a Cause, 1955, and Giant, 1956. He died before the latter 2 hit the screen. Rebel Without a Cause garnered him a posthumous Academy Award, and Giant a posthumous Academy Award nomination. At the same time that his movie career was rocketing upward, Dean became fascinated by rocketing forward, and he started driving race cars competitively. Apparently he was good at that too, winning and placing regularly in races. Then he got a Porsche 550 Spider. He had Little Bastard painted in cursive on its back end and the racing number 130 on the door and on its hood. It was practically undriven when he proudly showed it to Alec Guinness that night in 1955. On September 30th, Dean was driving the tiny car on a maiden voyage from Los Angeles to Salinas to race it in the Salinas Road Race on October 1st. In the passenger seat was his mechanic, Rolf Witherick. Following him in Dean's Ford station wagon was Bill Hickman, a Hollywood stunt driver. The station wagon towed a trailer that was originally intended to carry... I did it. All right. Okay, so Jenny, I think everybody that's going to read is done now. So if you want to lead us through the next part.
Yeah, so I think it's I'm not as skilled at hosting Zoom. I don't know if Thea can make this a free-for-all where if we talk, it just takes over, correct? As if we were all in the room together. Do you
want to go down the list starting at the beginning and have people
why don't you read off the names, and just if anybody or I can read off the names, I made a list. Let's start with Nancy's book. Does anybody have any questions or comments or guesses, or what would you want to ask Nancy about her piece? I will tell you that my first instinct with Nancy's piece was I felt like it was going to be a Civil War widow headed west. I have no idea what made me feel that way. And then I wondered if it had ties when you started talking sort of about the Native American ties, if it was going to be a book that had South Dakota ties. So that was my thoughts on Nancy's piece.
You're close. Am I supposed to reveal it now or not? Or we're just taking guesses?
If you can reveal it now. If no one else has any input, we'll have you go ahead and reveal your title and author.
Well, it is a historical fiction piece adapted from writing by a captive by the Indian who was mentioned in the reading during the 1862, so your time period's right and your guess, war, the Minnesota uprising as it's known and so on. And it's by a Brookings, South Dakota author, Phyllis Cole Dye. My book club had it. I have yet to find out who suggested it, but I was so taken with it that I ordered 2 copies for Christmas gifts. It is amazing. The amount of scholarship that went into this is incredible. It's Phyllis Cole, C-O-L-E -D-A-I. She has a website with that name, and she's quite an amazing person herself. But her historical research, to this person, to me, who knows about historical research, is amazing. And how she makes that story go. And I chose it for that. I wanted you to get a context. I wanted you to have a story, and it ended just perfectly. But I had more than the amount I read ready to go. And it's like that. Cannot put the book down. And my impression of some of this historical writing is it's not as interesting or as that was, or it has moments of boredom included, but this one never did for some reason.
What's the title?
The title is Beneath the Same Stars, which the stars came out in this as appropriate too. And so, and I'd show it, but my copy is on interlibrary loan and covered up with the slip from USD, so you can't very much see. There's the title.
I think Jenny had a question.
I was just going to ask. This will be a question for everybody. I always wonder if people look ahead at the book. And Mary, I'm actually going to pick you as an example. You had mentioned that you had been reading and practicing reading your piece. So you picked a specific selection. I always wonder if people pick a specific spot that they thought that they knew that was going to grip, or we've done Lection before where I've just slapped open a big book and started reading. So that'll be another question is, did you choose your selection intentionally? And I guess I didn't really express with my book. I don't know if anybody has any questions about mine at the beginning. Initially, my plan was just to drop it open and pick a piece. And it was kind of funny, so that's exactly what I did, but I did do it right before we signed on. I've done it before where I've gone up to the microphone and just been like, bam, I'm gonna read, but I did kind of want to be prepared for Zoom. And it's just interesting what I flipped open to read. It's almost like fate sometimes. The piece that was the first thing on the page just kind of hit home for some things I've been talking about with someone else in my life lately. So sometimes we read things for a reason, but
what's the title?
My book.
Yeah, I wrote a tranquil meditation when you started reading, and then I found myself caught up and I was doing my fingers.
Can't quite read it, Jenny. I get magic, but.
Yeah, my book is called Kinesic Magic, Channeling Energy with Postures and Gestures. So kind of ways to bring a little everyday magic into your world, into your life, and make yourself feel better. So, but it is funny how sometimes we pick a piece and it unintentionally speaks to the moment.
What kind of magic?
What was that?
Title again. What kind of magic?
Kinesic, K-I-N-E-S-I-C.
Okay.
I will maybe just type that in the chat because I need to practice doing that.
Good. I'm keeping a list too, and I'll send it out to everyone after class also.
Nice.
Sure. Let's see who's next on our list, Jenny.
After
Monica.
Nancy is Monica. I will never look at anyone named Merle the same again.
It's Merle.
Okay. The name of the book is Flat Broke with Two Goats.
Oh, I knew it was a goat. My brother raises goats.
I thought it was a baboon.
I thought it was baboon at first, but then at the end, I thought it was a goat.
The author is Jennifer M.C.G.A.H.A. McGaha.
Where does the story of Merle and his flamboyant urination take us?
It takes us to baby goats.
I love it.
So I picked this up because I knew that I had to read a really heavy book for book club. So I needed something to read for a couple days before I started that. And I thought this was going to be just lighthearted. And it starts out just not lighthearted at all. So the first night I read it for like 2 hours, and I was like, I have just got to go to sleep. And then the next day it got a little more lighthearted. But I enjoyed it.
Wow. That is so much fun to learn what all these are.
Broke with two goats. Okay.
Then I think it's Jane, is that right, Jenny?
Jane is next. I feel like initially maybe we all have an idea what Jane was reading from.
The Bible?
I don't think so.
No,
Nope.
no, not the Bible.
I think that we all maybe lean towards feeling it like it was the Bible, and then it was right in the last few seconds I thought, no, it's not, but I'm not sure what.
Nobody knows what it is?
No.
Wow, that's sad.
What is it, Jane?
A Course in Miracles.
Course in Miracles.
Who's the author?
You have to read it to find out the author.
Okay.
It's very spiritual. And let's see what it was.
Is it a fiction, a non-fiction, a personal tale? Is it?
It's definitely nonfiction.
Okay.
It's a spiritual.
Okay.
Definitely spiritual. But it's a book I think everyone should read.
Interesting. I've got it written down. So we'll
If you do, say so yourself.
I do.
Awesome.
How about Anne? Anne is next. I would not even be able to guess.
I couldn't guess.
I just know it's obviously about a poker ace. I'm not sure anything other than that. I wouldn't be able to guess.
Spite and malice, actually, rather than poker.
What was it?
It's called Widows, and the poem is called Widows.
Okay.
It's by Louise Gluck. She's an American poet who won the Nobel Prize in Literature this year, American poet. And when I read that, that's when I went to the library and said, well, I got to read what this Nobel laureate wrote. And anyway, I got a book of her poems out, and I could see why she got a Nobel Prize. Anyway, and of course I read it really fast because I wanted to fit it in. So you probably didn't get half the meaning out of it, but.
Did you read the whole poem? And did
Yeah.
you read the entire poem?
I did read the entire poem, yes.
All right. Let's see. Then Jim, right, Jenny?
Yes, next is Jim.
I have a guess. Is it The Color of Water?
No.
It felt so familiar. I feel like I've read that, but I just don't know what it was then.
Is it a nonfiction or a fictional piece?
It's a nonfiction piece.
Is it Becoming?
No.
Nope.
That's a good guess.
Oh. Well, the book I read from is called Be the Bridge, with the subtitle Pursuing God's Heart for Racial Reconciliation. And it's written by Latasha Morrison. Latasha Morrison, who is an African-American woman who I would guess is now in her 30s. The portion I read was reflecting back on experience she had as a junior in high school.
So that was from the perspective of a female?
Yes.
Oh.
I think I picked up it was a female. I don't know why though.
I felt like it was a high school age, but a young man. I thought it was going to involve sports at some point. I don't know why.
I thought it was going to be back in the 70s, but this must have been in the 21st century, huh?
Oh yeah, I would say
History.
maybe the early 2000s when the experience she wrote about. And I did choose the writing to reflect what I felt was kind of the essence of the whole book. I didn't just read it random. This stuck out in my mind months after I had read the book. And what I think it reflects is her sense that to the extent she moved toward the majority culture as an African-American woman, she was very much accepted by others. But when she called majority white people to enter more into her culture as a Black woman, as a person of color, she found the kind of strange, unexpected reactions that were reflected in the portion that I read.
You know, maybe
I thought it was a good summary of her whole book in one little incident.
Yeah. Where was the school? The high school?
I don't know that. It was in the South somewhere. She was raised in the South.
Okay.
And I was going to say, I was in the 70s, I was raised in a school that was more Black than white. And I can't imagine anybody dissing Black history when I went to school or not studying it. So that boggled my mind that's why I thought it must have been decades and decades ago.
At one point, she said that the minority population of her high school was 13%. So it was an overwhelmingly majority white school.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I'm definitely going to look that one up.
It's very fitting for some of what we're seeing in the times we're in now, even.
I was thinking that too. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the person who said, well, we're going to study Italian American history just reminds me of the people saying, well, all lives matter. You know, we don't have to talk about Black Lives Matter. So,
yeah. I think
Our next author was Deb.
Okay, the book is.
Can I guess? Was it Mark Twain?
No, it wasn't, but it kind of, but that's a good guess, actually. The book is Lend Me Your Ears, Great Speeches in History by William Safire, who is no longer with us. But I checked on Amazon, you can still get the book. Actually, the book out on Amazon was updated in 2004. This is the 1997 edition. So the speech that I picked out of here, partly because it was short, but partly because I get such a chuckle whenever I read this speech. The speech was by someone named Noah Sweat, who's of Mississippi. And the backstory here is that prohibition of alcohol was still a hot issue in Mississippi in 1948, long after most of the nation had retired the controversy with repeal of the 18th Amendment. But Noah Sweat was running for state representative in Alcorn County, Mississippi, and came up with an ingenious way of evading the issue. He made fun of the way it made other politicians squirm whenever they were asked, you know, how they felt about prohibition. He won, and serving later as prosecutor and finally as judge of the First Judicial District in the 1970s. He had a copyright this speech because so many other politicians were using it without attribution. So, and it was written to satirize, you know, the fine art of fence straddling. And I just think it's just such a brilliant example of someone who, you know, said both sides, the pros and the cons, without really taking a position. And so I enjoy it. And the book is great. I mean, you've got speeches in here all through history, Pericles, George Washington's farewell address, Winston Churchill's address to Westminster College in Fulton, Mississippi, you know, Theodora from Egypt, you know, there's just all kinds of interesting speeches that have been given throughout history. And sometimes it pays to go back and read history to help us navigate today.
That is really, really cool. I thought it was Truman Capote. Sounded like a Capote kind of Christmassy story coming up.
Yeah.
Fun.
Next was Mary Ann. My mind turned the pages multiple times from what kind of a story you were reading.
Can you unmute yourself, Mary Ann?
Okay. Well, here's the book. Can you see it? It's called The Bondwoman's Narrative by Hannah Crafts, edited by Henry Louis Gates Jr. It's thought to be the first novel written by an African-American slave.
Really?
Yeah, 1856 to 57. It's divided into 3 parts. I got my fingers here, see? The first part tells about the discovery of the manuscript and all that it went through to get put together as a book. And the last is references to every chapter of the book. The woman obviously had access to a huge library. You find references to Henry James, Poe, Dickens, Shakespeare, and she made a novel out of it, wow. borrowing heavily from all of these. But I didn't read these 2 parts completely yet. I went directly to the novel because I was curious. And then when I'm done, I'll read I kind of follow the chapters as I see the references. But it's a tremendously interesting book, I thought. And I had just finished reading the passage about the face turning black when I saw this email about reading, and I thought, oh, I got something I'd like to read.
Yeah, it's intriguing.
I even thought it was science fiction for a little bit.
Yeah, you would think that. But I guess that black face is based on an actual incident. I looked up the chapter on that. How she put all these things together into a novel. I call it kind of a Gothic novel. There's a lot of
it had a very Victorian feel to it.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our next reader was Cassandra. Obviously about a seance. I was curious if it was written from the perspective of somebody attending the seance or the person that was channeling, the medium. And I feel like it was fiction, but you never know.
Okay, anybody else got comments?
I'll
tell you my very academic approach to this. I watched The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix.
Yes.
And I don't read in that genre hardly ever. But the film really got me. I thought, why am I liking this? Because it's really kind of sappy. And I then went and read some reviews, and mostly it got some good reviews, except one guy said, this is ridiculous. It's nothing like the book. The Haunting of Hill House is by Shirley Jackson. And I think probably most of us have had experience reading The Lottery, and beyond that, I've not read any of Shirley Jackson's work. Apparently she was, you know, pretty good in this area.
Yeah, I've read some of her other stuff. She is
Yeah.
good.
And this particular story is highly acclaimed as a horror story or a ghost story.
When you said the name Theodora, yeah. I knew that as a character from Hill House. That is actually the first image that popped in my mind. But cool. I did not think that this was from Hill House.
Right. Well, so I did decide after I read the reviews and everything, I thought, okay, I'll get the book, which I just did last weekend. And I haven't read it. So I picked out some of the characters are the same names, but they're not actually the same. So I haven't read the book beyond what I read there.
Is The Haunting of Hill House?
Yeah, by Shirley Jackson. She died at a very young age in the 60s, maybe 70s.
There's a movie out about her right now too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, I haven't watched it yet, but I'm definitely going to. I'm a huge fan of The Lottery.
There's another book she wrote, We Have Always Lived in the Castle, that I think was really good.
Yeah.
Yep.
Good one. Love it.
Well, and our next author, or not author, our next reader was Mary. And I did see David commented in the chat that during the time you were reading that it was about Mount St. Helens.
It was.
And I feel like it was a non-fictional retelling.
Correct. The bit about Mount St. Helens is actually is a chapter on volcanologists. And it's actually that's the passage about volcanologists being the worst scientists in the world has stuck in my brain since I first read this book a long time ago.
Maybe now though, as we're living in times of COVID, the volcanologists are like, hey, we're not the worst anymore.
They're still pretty bad scientists.
What is the title?
The title is A Short History of
Bill Bryson.
Nearly Everything by Bill Bryson. And it's actually a picture of the globe with an asterisk beside it. And the title is at the bottom as the asterisk. A Short History of Nearly Everything.
Love Bill Bryson.
I love him too.
Yeah.
Did you read The Body?
Pardon?
The Body by Bill Bryson?
Yeah, I'm about 2/3 of the way through it. That was my Christmas gift last year from a sister.
Yeah. I love that book.
We have a couple copies of it at the Ollie office when we get back to the office. If anyone wants to borrow it, you're welcome to.
Yeah, I think we were supposed to have a class on The Body. I think somebody was presenting that book. And it was really time for the class, and then the class was canceled or something.
Spring.
What was the author's last name again?
Bryson. Bryson.
Thank you.
His first really famous book was called A Walk in the Woods. It was about him and he and a friend walking the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, I read that and decided I would never walk the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, I've got a friend
who didn't walk at all.
Who was it? Robert Redford and Nick Nolte made a movie out of it?
Yeah.
Robert Redford played Bill Bryson.
Yeah. Right, yes.
It's a family classic in my family. We still
Really?
joke about it.
Really?
Laugh because we like to hike, but we're not up for the whole trail.
Well, here's the thing. He didn't finish the trail.
No.
He didn't
He
finish.
started, but
You walk that long? My goodness, you've got to finish when you're that close.
months.
Months. I have friends who are through hikers. They've done the Appalachian Trail, the Pacific Crest Trail, and the Rocky Mountain Trail, and trails over in Europe. Yeah.
I've done the whole Western Mall more than once.
But he's like, Bill Bryson's just a lightweight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a light, well, in one sense.
Yeah, right.
One of his problems was weight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Our next reader was Bill. I would like to hear from everybody else based on Bill's reading. What genre of book do you think that is?
Oh, I said mystery.
Western.
Hmm?
My first thought was also mystery, and then I thought it was going to be science fiction.
Fantasy.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Fantasy science fiction.
All right,
There
Bill.
for a while, I thought it was humor.
All over the map.
Or a country western song. I lost my wife, I lost my dog, nobody knows where my truck went. Yeah, that's.
Give me a beer. Yeah.
All right, Bill, reveal for us.
Okay. No, the genre is detective fiction. It's not science fiction. It's not a Western. It's modern. It takes place in England, Britain.
Yeah.
The author is Martha Grimes. She writes a lot of detective fiction. She's an American, but she writes British mysteries.
Really?
She's written some other things too, but most of her books, the main character is a detective inspector with Scotland Yard. Richard Jury is his name. And they're really good books, and she's a good writer. Every one of her books about him, and there's a lot of them, the title is the name of a pub that actually exists somewhere in England.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and this one is called the Old Wine Shades. And that's where they're sitting. These two guys are sitting talking.
The old what?
The Old Wine Shades.
Oh.
Wine shades?
Wine, W-I-N-E, Shades. It's the name of a pub. And well, there's another book. I've got some other books by her here. One of them is called The Stargazing. That's an actual pub in Britain, but there's a lot of them. The reason I read that is, and it's probably been 3 or 4 years since I read this. The reason I read it, that prologue, is because that's the reason I bought the book. I read that prologue, and I gotta read this book. And she is good. She comes up with these plots you can't imagine. That if you get into it farther, you find out this guy that lost his wife, he does go to the police. The police investigate, and they say, no, they don't exist. You're out of your mind. You're imagining all of this. You never had a wife and kid. And finally, he's convinced enough that he did imagine it. He commits himself to an institution, and then the dog came back.
Oh.
I got to read the book. And I can tell you how it turned out, except it was so long ago, I don't remember.
Don't tell us.
No.
I want to know. I want to read it.
You should read it.
But it's she's a good writer. She's like, she's an Agatha Christie type writer. She writes these British mysteries. They're not bloody, gory things. There's a lot of investigation and technique. And she writes a lot of them. She's an American.
Interesting.
Cool.
Does it have a story embedded in the series that make it recommended to read from the first one in series?
No, you don't have to. Each book is by itself, but it's mainly about, in the detective series, it's this Richard Jury. He works for Scotland Yard. He lives in an apartment. He's got a girlfriend that lives down the hall, and he's like a lot of detectives, kind of lives on the edge. But it's good. I really like him. It's like if you like Agatha Christie and Hercule Poirot, you don't have to read from start to finish. But some of the other characters in there are several other characters carry on from one story to the next, but they're all separate stories. And now that the last 4 years is almost over, I'm going to go back to reading books like that.
Good.
Instead of all the books written by former employees of. Because I got a stack of those about like that. I quit reading them. I have several I'm not even going to read because I just sick of it.
If you would have started reading one of those, I probably still would have said, so what is that? Science fiction or a mystery? Or...
Yeah, right.
No.
It was a good lead in then for Kathy's. Kathy's piece immediately grabbed me because I thought I used to only read cop and murder books. Like that was it. And then I would dabble in maybe horror or thriller, but it immediately grabbed me. And then you said 2061. And I'm like, is it sci-fi? Is it?
Anybody who's ever read this author will know right away what it is.
I've written Alex Cross, but then I heard 2061 and I crossed it off.
Any more guesses?
Janet Ivanovich?
Oh,
No. You probably can't see that.
Oh,
No,
J.D. Robb.
J.D. Robb.
It's J.D. Robb, also who also writes as Nora Roberts.
Really?
Yes, she writes the J.D. Robb books are all a series. This is the one I had played the excerpt from is called Shadows in Death. It's book 51 in the In Death series. So I think there's another one that's come out since then. This is not quite the most recent one. I don't think the most recent one is on audio yet. But
is she the one that wrote
I
one for
read
the?
all 51 of the books she's written in this in-depth series. It's about a murder cop named Eve Dallas, who takes place in about 40 years from now, in the future, and she has a abusive past. Her father was abusive, and she was found on the streets when she was 7 with a broken arm, and she ends up becoming a murder detective with the NYPD in New York. All the books pretty much take place in New York, and she ends up falling in love with a multi-billionaire named Rourke. And so the stories are part murder mystery, part romance. It's got a lot of humor in it, and part futuristic, because it talks about maxi buses and stuff that go vertical, and it's my favorite series by far.
That's fun. I didn't know they were set in the future. That's fun. I'll have to try one.
What was the title of that book again?
Oh, Shadows in Death.
Yeah.
Death or debt?
Death. Death.
Oh, okay.
The whole series of books has some word, and then it's the last 2 words are in death.
Oh.
Well, that then is a good lead into Thea's piece. Does anybody have any guess what kind of a book or what I full disclosure know what she was reading from, and I don't think any of you could guess it, but I did.
Well, it's a biography, isn't it?
Biography.
James Dean?
Or memoir?
No.
Vaguely familiar.
It's okay. It's a book called Cursed Objects by J.W. Ocker.
Cursed Objects.
And he has an amazing podcast that is called Odd Things I've Seen. OTIS, Odd Things I've Seen. And I listen to his podcast. They're really short. He does travel writing, and he goes to weird places. And in all these weird places that he's been, he often gets told, well, this object is cursed, or this house is cursed, or this graveyard is cursed. And so he started keeping a list of cursed objects. And so this book just came out, and it has all kinds of stories in it, everything from the Titanic, the Hope Diamond, James Dean's car. It's got mummies and skulls and all kinds of things. He said right before class started, I was reading a little bit more in it, and he said that when he first started realizing that this was a topic, that he went on eBay and just typed in cursed objects. And he said, you can buy cursed objects for as low as $11. So if anyone wants one, plus postage. So I get a kick out of crazy things like that. I always want to go see the world's biggest ball of string and that kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I'll go with you. I want to see that too.
I do too. I love that kind of stuff.
I want to get in.
Trip.
I think I'd just start selling everything I own as a cursed object. I could make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Just as long as they don't, now that we're post-election, that they don't sell the White House.
There's probably some cursed things.
Are we post-election?
Are we?
I don't know. I haven't
I don't think so.
for like an hour.
Oh my gosh.
I do have to say, with the world we're living in and the technology and the things that we're using in media and social media, it has changed. A lot of people don't sit down and really read a book anymore. And everything that we get that in sound bites and little clips and things like that. And even at the time when I developed the concept of Lection, I realized it's true for all of us, just the way media is presented to us now. In a minute or two, you know whether it's got you. And we have become so honed in on the idea of, myself as an example of, if I picked up A Course in Miracles off of a table at Barnes and Noble, I might look at it for a minute, but I might go, this is kind of outside of my realm, and just set it back down without even giving it a sound bite. But then listening to Jane read it, I wanted to know, where are we going with this? Where did this story come from? What is it about? And maybe now I would go pursue that book. That's happened with every Lection that I've participated in. I've gone and pursued more than one of the books that were brought to the event, even though the cover alone or the title alone or the genre would not have grabbed me individually. So I have appreciated this last hour and a half of, we're still getting these short little bites of media, but with so much more depth as we each talk about why we read what we read and things like that. And with, it's been such a lovely break from the short little sound bites I could have been having filtered in through other means.
You can only do this like once a year though, because you got such a big reading list now.
Right.
That's true. We used to meet once a month, wasn't it, Jenny?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And every single time we would have where somebody would, even though like the attendees, like we're all intertwined in somehow, but we don't necessarily know each other on the day to day. We had one where Mike Henriksen read from a book and somebody wanted to know the title, and afterwards was talking about it, and Mike said, take the book. And they like exchanged books and to see that connection and things like that. And then again, as I said at the beginning, you tend to find people and just look at how many of our pieces here, it was almost like each title sort of led into the next without even realizing it. So we also had one instance that I really enjoyed at Full Circle. I don't remember if you were there this night, but a young woman that was there having coffee, just sitting in the room while we were doing Lection, she asked what we were doing, and Full Circle, of course, is a bookstore. And she said, oh, what is this? I would love to do this. And she just picked up a book off the table and said, can I? And she just opened it, and she had the most amazing voice and presentation. And she just wanted to read out loud because everybody else was. So. But also, I do encourage people, even if you're alone in the room, read out loud to yourself every once in a while.
Yeah, I was trying to get my mom to do that, because she's older and doesn't have people to talk to, and she's losing words.
Right.
I was trying to convince her if she would read out loud, she would at least hear them, but she won't.
It is a practice of speech therapy to do that, but also I think it's hell, it just takes that immersion into the story. I mean, you can get inside your head and really get into a story. And we've all read a book where we've wanted to be in the story. And I think if you read it out loud and like speak it into your room around you, it's just the next step of that immersion.
Happy Grady had something.
Yeah, I'm going to put a plug in for audiobooks. They're wonderful. If you
Yeah.
got, especially if you got a good narrator, because they do voices, you know, for different characters, and you can really get into the story. Plus, you can wash dishes, you can knit, you can crochet, you can, you know,
You can drive
exercise, whatever, and be reading at the same time. You can read lots more books via audio.
My favorite audiobook is Water for Elephants. The reading in that is phenomenal.
Yeah, I've read that one. I had checked that one out from the library. Yeah.
Water for Elephants.
Oh, sure.
I love audiobooks, the nonfiction books, when the author reads their own work.
I agree.
They know what the words are, they know what part is coming, and professional readers do too. But there's just something special about having the author read their own work. Like I've listened to a bunch of Bill Bryson's books because he reads most of his. Michelle Obama reading Becoming because she's got a great voice. But any other nonfiction book where the author reads it themselves, I find is just a little more special because of that fact.
I would say that is a good lead into one other rule of Lection is I've never allowed anyone to read anything that they themselves are the author of, because being a writer myself, I write just short stories and nothing for anybody to read, just creative process. But I like the idea of something about this piece, this lection captured you, and I want you to help me experience it too. So I love it when writers and authors, Thea's a writer, I love it when I find out people who that is part of their creative outlet is writing, when they bring me something and saying, you know what, I as a writer was really gripped by this, you know, and there's a time and a place for authors to read their own work. As Michelle Obama, yeah, she can read me bedtime stories any day of the week. But also to know, well, then if I appreciate you as a writer so much, who do you appreciate, you know? So I would like to get back to doing it monthly, and thank you, Thea, for providing the interweb forum to show me how it could be done so that we can bring it back.
I think we definitely can. And thank you, Jenny. You led us well through this. It was wonderful. I'm really excited, and I'm going to send out a list of all the books that we talked about to everyone. We'll get it in the email. I don't know if I'll get it done today. I haven't sent the newsletter out yet, but as soon as I get that done, I'll get to this book list. It might be next week, but Jenny,
That's fine.
I'm sorry.
I just said that's fine.
Okay.
I have a question. How does a person get into this group?
There isn't a necessarily get into it. I would just, whenever I found a place where I wanted to sit and read and had a date, I would just post it on Facebook or email people. So when I just sort of publicize it as an open event, you wouldn't even need to, you can be Lection. You can invite a few friends to sit down and tell them to each bring their own book and set up a little egg timer and cut them off at 2 minutes.
You guys, maybe we can do this as a SIG in the future too, a special interest group.
Yeah.
Ollie.
Mhm.
I feel like people liked doing
Right.
it.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it was really cool.
Mhm.
And then I would encourage if we did develop something like that, that if you wanted to participate again, bring a friend, even if it's just inviting them in online, bring somebody else that you, especially if it's someone you know that they always tend to pick up a different thing than you, just to see learn more about your friends that way, about what are they into, what do they read.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Jenny. It has been a pleasure to have you here this afternoon, and thank you, everyone. I'm going to go do some reading. So
Okay.
everyone have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Thank you.
It was
Thank you.
great. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank
Nice to meet all of you.
Nice to meet you, Jenny.
Thanksgiving.
Yes.
That was awesome, Jenny.
Thank you, Thea. Thank you so much.
It went so well. I think everybody was really happy.
Yes, share the link with me when you post it. So
I definitely will, and you can share it as much as you want. So
awesome. Yeah, once it's up, I will. So, and let me know if there is interest in doing this as a group. I would love to do it again, and I would love to be able to. I don't know if Ollie allows that. Like look at Graham and Dave and all of them. If it becomes just a group, can we invite anybody, or is it?
yeah. Yeah. We don't really have rules about that. It's just be like a club, like yeah. That would be.
Yeah, it's like
no
like
problem.
Eric Edwards that has read before, and he's read it 2 or 3 different lections.
Yep.
He
Yep.
just was reading to me the other day. So
Cool.
and said, when are we going to do this again? So
Neat.
Yeah.
Oh, I loved it. It was so much fun.
Alright.
I'll look up these books and get them sent out to everybody. And this will be fun. We'll do it again.
All right. Have a good rest of your work day. Bye.
Thanks for doing this. You're awesome. See you later.
Bye.